Hello and welcome back to Jack Knives Reviews. I'm of course your host, Jack Knives. Now that Jackoween has come and gone, we look forward into what I'm going to be talking about next. And while reflecting back on the last couple months, I thought about the writers and actors strike, how much it has affected Hollywood and the Hollywood system, and how it has affected movies in general. And in that affectation, I thought about it, and I thought, who was the hero? Who was the hero in the entirety of this narrative being told forward? And there was only one name that stood on top of that mountain. A24. Yes, A24, the independent company that has been around for over a decade, has started from a small little groundswell into a forefronting giant that is so powerful now. It has the capability to get megastars, and has the ability to show the truth and independence of filmmaking as it is intended. But on top of that, it also gave the middle finger to the Hollywood system and still succeeded. A24 is literally a mixed bag. It has crazy, imaginative, weird, bizarre, funny, interesting, dramatic action and horror all bundled in together. It is truly a melding pot of creativity, for better or for worse. So in order to honor A24, I created my personal list of the top 24 A24 movies. Now obviously this isn't a definitive list because there's going to be so many movies that come down the pipeline years from now. And if their past movies have been any indicator, they have no means of stopping. So think of this as a top 24 A24 as of the time of filming this. So let's get started. A man named Hank is stranded on a desert island about to kill himself, when suddenly a corpse washes ashore on the beach. He befriends it, naming it Manny, only to discover that he can talk, and he also has a variety of different things that he can use to help him survive, and may even be the key to getting him home. This movie is a fun, bizarre movie, and you're going to hear me use the word bizarre and weird and funny and random all throughout this list. But this movie is a great starter point to get into what A24 can really be. It's not necessarily one of the funniest movies I've ever seen, but just the concept alone. The fact that it got enough funding to make it. I mean, it's literally Paul Dano and a Daniel Radcliffe farting corpse, and it's literally like almost a comedic version of Castaway, yet it goes deeper than that because it deals with what it means to deal with, personal loss, grief, relationships, dealing with what it is to have a parasocial relationship, what it means to actually be able to interact with the world around you, and the creativity that can come from the madness around you. And I think that this movie just kind of encapsulates it in such a funny, unique way. It's just weird. It's just so bizarre that a movie with two guys who now are pretty much universal names, especially in the nerd sphere, as Harry Potter and the Riddler, are just able to let their guards down and just give in to funny weirdness. And I think that's kind of what A24 has a habit of doing to the best of these actors. In the mid-1990s, 20 French urban dancers joined together for a 3-day rehearsal in a closed-down boarding school. They make one last dance around a large sangria bowl. However, it is drug-laced and causes all of their celebration and rehearsal to descend into a dark and explosive nightmare as they try to survive the night and find out who's responsible for the horrors that they witness. Climax is quite a unique film. It has a semi-realistic, yet not quite true realism. It does give off the experience of basically a bad, horrible acid trip within a sexually explicit nightclub. It shows kind of what that vibe can feel like from an outside perspective. we are almost like in a voyeuristic setting, looking from a looking glass at what is happening to the world around us. And it's pretty disturbing. And you watch it feeling uncomfortable and feeling weirded out and kind of grossed out. But that's intentional because that's how these sort of settings can make you feel. And yet you're also kind of amazed with how simultaneously choreographed and yet unchoreographed that the actors interacting with each other are. Specifically like the dance movements and the different ways and gyrations and things that they do make you have this almost sense of unease, but not overplaying it like it did with the newer Suspiria movie. Being the sober person at the party kind of feel to it. And I think that's really what the realm it's going for in this movie. Aspiring actor Greg Sestero befriends the eccentric Tommy Wiseau. The two travel to LA, and when Hollywood rejects them both, Tommy decides to write, direct, produce, and star in his own movie alongside Greg. A movie that will live in infamy, called The Room. Tommy Wiseau is an enigma to this day still, even amongst those that love his movie The Room. Ironically or unironically, his acting is so jarring and bad that it's almost uniquely perfect in its way. I can't quite describe it unless you've seen The Room. And once you see it, yes, 100% agreed. It is terrible acting. It is just god awful. But in that way, it's almost like charming? It's weird. But what blows me away is when I read the book that this is based off, I got more of a behind the scenes of even those working around Tommy Wiseau didn't really know who he was, how he was who he was, and how he could afford what he could afford. It was weird. It's a weird movie, but the Disaster Artist captures it perfectly. And I did love the chemistry, not just because Tommy Wiseau is played by James Franco, and the main actor is played by Dave Franco, and in real life they are brothers. But not just because they're blood related, but that brotherly dynamic between him and the actor are really true to the book's narrative of what he talks about in his autobiography. It really brings out this sense of appreciation for him. Anyone could have made a movie that was basically about Tommy Wiseau and turned it into a joke and turned it into just this weird, bad, crap on him because, kick the kid while he's down kind of thing. We all know The Room is bad. We know Tommy Wiseau is a bad actor. But what's so charming about him is he tries so hard. And in that trying, he almost triumphs. And that's the point of this movie and The Room and Tommy Wiseau in general. And I honestly think he's hilariously charming. I think this movie does not get as appreciated as it really should be. But it is on my list. Chiron is a young man in the streets of Miami. Throughout his life, we see constant abuse, trials, tribulations, and different things to determine who he is, his sexual and physical identity, and how he survives everyday life, all the way into adulthood. So Moonlight was a movie I only heard about through passing, but having sat down and watched it, it really is a great movie. It does deal with aspects that I personally will never or have never experienced because I'm not a black person, I'm not a young black person, but it does present itself in a way that I feel a lot of people that do or do not connect with it could find some connection in it. The isolation, the feeling of needing to prove yourself more and being constantly judged for not proving yourself more, for being forced to do things that you're not actually supposed to be doing or capable of dealing with. The main character having a mother who's a hardcore drug addict, having an abusive relationship with pretty much every male figure around him, not really being sure of who or how he sees himself or sees other sexual identity being discovered. Things that it's about a life. And with a reflection of a life, it is showing the cracks and crevices that many of us have to suppress, especially those that I know personally that have been through darker aspects of their communities or their lifestyles. They do have to subvert those things. I personally have myself. And this movie deals with that very heavily. It's very much about suppression, about hiding who you are, hiding who you truly feel that you can be to make up this facade version of who you are. And it deals with it in a way that I don't think most people could really understand or relate to up until seeing this movie. And I think this is a good movie to show people what it means to deal with that sort of life, what it means to be given the hardships and how to deal with them. Sir Gawain, Knight of the Round Table, is given a challenge by a mysterious skin and armor-covered Green Knight, that if anyone can cut off his head in a year's time, they must come to him to have their head removed as well. Gawain does indeed cut off his head, only for it to be reattached. Now Sir Gawain must travel and go through trials and tribulations, all to test and challenge his own fate. The Green Knight is a fable that only those that are heavy into the fantasy lore or arthurial legends really know about. I myself only had a fleeting passing knowledge of it, but having read the actual story and seeing the movie, I feel it accurately, beautifully represents the story in a grounded, dark, gritty way, but not in an over-the-top way, which is what I was really afraid of. I was really worried it was going to go on the Ridley Scott aspect of fantasy storytelling where everything's a bombastic action even though it takes place in the woods. But no, it doesn't. It does a great portrayal of Gawain from arthurial legend. And the setting is just utterly gorgeous, but also has a very underlying mystique to it that isn't overdone too much, but it's done just in the right enough balance to make it unique and stand out on its own. I also absolutely love the design of the Green Knight. It is straight out of the original legend, but also has a unique flair to it that almost comes off like something I would see in a Guillermo del Toro movie, but not quite in his style, but in his aspects of his style. It's one movie I honestly think that anyone, regardless of any aspect or feeling towards A24, would definitely enjoy. Two people inside of a lighthouse must maintain their sanity in the 1890s while facing the elements, as well as supernatural events and curses ever looming. So I was late to the game when it came to the Lighthouse. It was one of those movies I didn't really at first want to see because it didn't intrigue me enough personally from a story aspect. I felt that I needed more beef to it. And I've heard multiple people talk about this movie, and it seems to be an extremely divisive movie. You either love it or you hate it. But I think I'm one of the rare breed of people who don't necessarily love the movie, but I don't necessarily think it's horrible either. I understand what it's going for. It's basically a almost retelling of an H.P. Lovecraft story, but done in a different way with different aspects, feelings, vibes, and sensations. It's a play drama set in a realistic way, but it's also set and filmed in a black and white setting. So you're not quite too sure of where you are time and place spatially as far as what's going on in the film. But Robert Eggers has been at that forefront of new filmmaking that I just absolutely love. His ability to draw atmosphere. It is pure atmosphere that draws you in, but the glue that binds the film together is the chemistry between Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson. It is an iconically genius actor fighting and arguing and bickering between another upcoming, soon-to-be amazing actor. He actually does show an insane amount of range with things as simple as just a look, an attitude, a voice, a feeling, just a slight glance. With Willem Dafoe's bombastic, just shouting and yelling, that soliloquy that he gives where he tells and yells was all done in one take. And it was all beautifully done, the way the shadows silhouette around him, the lighting, the angles, the feeling, it all drives a force and energy, pulls you in like a black hole. And I love that scene. And I think it's one of the best examples of how to show pure monologue acting at its finest. There's also a lot of weirdness that go around to it that are left up to interpretation for various reasons. But there's also a lot of subtextual things that you understand while watching it. I don't necessarily think it's a movie for everyone. It's very much on the heavy thinking, but it's also a movie that's told to you rather than allowing you to think for yourself. It has a good balance, but it does also divide people. Much like a lighthouse in a storm, it does kind of allow you to look through the fog if you so choose. So that was the first part of my top 24 A24 movies. But come back and we'll have the next section for you. Till then, I'll see you next time.